Hi, folks, and welcome to another episode of Coffeehouse of the Damned. My name is Steve. I'm here with Tom Deedy. And Tom, who is our guest tonight?
We are thrilled to have with us tonight Bram Stoker Award winning Mercedes Yardley. Welcome, Mercedes.
Hi, thanks for having me.
This is going to be fun. Um, Steve, did you have anything or do you want me to jump right in?
Oh, go ahead.
All right.
I got some notes, but.
Okay. So, my first question has to do with the long fiction or novella, however you want to phrase it, that won the Stoker, Little Dead Red. So it's basically a modern day take on a classic fairy tale. And my question is, I mean, those stories are out there a lot. There's a lot of anthologies that are, that's the theme is, twist up a couple fairy tales or something like that. But when you're writing that, is it a conscious choice that you're taking a fairy tale and modernizing it and or twisting it? Or did you start writing it and think this is kind of thematically like Little Red Riding Hood? I'm just curious. I don't want to turn this into a where do you get your ideas question, but I'm very curious about how these kind of stories originate.
My light went off. I'm in the pitch blackness. So originally it was for an anthology that my publisher had invited me to and asked me to do. That was a grim fairy tale anthology. So I was purposely going out and looking for something that I could use for that. But the reason I went for that and the reason I was asked to do that is because I like fairy tales so much. I mean, they're so deep and dark and rich and scary and meant to be scary. They're not sweet, the originals, most of them. And so that's something I like to do a lot. I have one I wrote that I haven't found a home for yet about a boy with autism. And it's based on, there's an old fairy tale called The Boy Who Learned Fear. It's about a boy that doesn't experience fear and he goes out and tries to, he sees ghosts and he plays with dead men, plays cards with dead men and things like that, but he doesn't experience that fear until somebody he gets married, which isn't what makes him experience fear, but she
Scared the
gets
hell out of me.
goldfish one night. Yeah, just gonna let you know, marriage can be okay. But she gets goldfish and she pours him down his clothes at night while he's asleep and he's shivering and she's like, that's what fear is like. That is what fear is like, is that cold, shivery, I don't know what's going on feeling. And so I use that to represent a child with autism, which my son has Williams syndrome and autism. And so I love the fairy tales and how they still apply today. And Little Dead Red, I modernized it because I tend to write a lot about social situations that happen now, especially social situations concerning women. We all know what it's like to be prey in some way or another, and we all know what it's like to have children and say, be careful and be safe and stuff. But with Little Dead Red, it's mostly about the mom.
Right.
And in the story, she just says, okay, go take this to grandma, be safe, bye. And she's out of it. That's it. You don't hear from her again. And I wanted to explore kind of that character that is the catalyst for this, but you never see in the originals. But we just have so much scary, terrifying things that go on now that I wanted to place it in today's society because it fits so well, as a cautionary tale and just that fear that we all have under the surface of, scary things and true crime and people taking our little children and
Yeah, that's interesting. I did a panel and I can't even remember what the show was or what the panel was, but somebody brought like 100-year-old book of fairy tales. And this was, sold as, a children's book of fairy tales. And the artwork in this book was absolutely terrifying. And when you even think about the stories, even though, the cartoon versions kind of soften them a little bit, but most fairy tales are pretty damn scary and they're all cautionary tales and they kind of still unfortunately apply to a lot of like what you just said, a lot of what's happening today.
Yeah, well, you think of Sleeping Beauty. He sleeps with her and she gets pregnant right while she's asleep, and Rapunzel, her prince fell out of the window, the witch pushed him out and he got blinded. And, there's the one with the girl with the silver hands where hands get cut off. And I mean, there's all these, they're really dark,
They are.
They are
Mhm.
dark, and we sanitize things so much. I mean, I'm all for a little sanitation. Like, I don't want to warp my children more than I have to. Sanitize to the point where it's like I told my daughter, read Hunchback of Notre Dame, and she's like, "This is not like the Disney movie," and I'm like, "No,
Right.
No.
Right.
spoiler, everybody dies," But yeah, we sanitize a little too much, I think.
We do. There's a reason they're dark and scary.
Yeah.
You go back and look at the original Beauty and the Beast, and it's basically two people sitting at a dining table talking about sex.
Well, I'm going to go back and reread that with more interest now.
I may be thinking of the old French Jean Cocteau version of the film, but yeah, you're right. I mean, the Cinderella story had the
Yeah.
stepsisters shaving, their feet, and
Yeah.
into
Mutilation.
bloody messes in order to get into the slippers.
Right.
And interestingly enough, I'm working on a story right now, kind of based on Dorian Gray and beauty standards. When you talk about beauty standards, no one ever talks about the stepsisters, shaving, cutting off their toes, cutting off their heels. And it talks about how the glass slipper was like full of blood because they wanted so badly to fit in this thing that would, no one ever talked. I mean, that's another story maybe I should look at, but no one ever talks about that,
Right.
It's just like, oh yeah, we just kind of, let's just, it didn't fit him. It was, it was too small. It was like, no, they did everything they could. Like, that's horrific. That's horrifying. That's under the gaze of their, matriarch,
Right.
encouraging him to do these things.
Of course. Yeah. It's interesting. You've just in the short time, you've already named 2 or 3 fairy tales that I'm not even familiar with. So either you read a lot for research or you've read a lot just whatever in your childhood and remember them. I don't know.
I always read them. My dad, when he would go on trips, he would bring back fairy tales from different. And when I was punished, I mean, I was an exceptionally good kid. They're so lucky they had me. But when I was punished, they took my book of fairy tales and like put it in the closet, the coat closet on the highest shelf that I couldn't get to without like dragging out like a chair. So they knew if I was going to go try and get my punishment. So yeah, my parents, they set me up well.
Good. I think I like your parents. That sounds great.
Yeah, you would. They're awesome.
Now, looking through your bibliography, I saw you basically write in every length of story that is available out there. You've gone from flash to novellas and short stories, novels. Do you have a favorite?
Whatever I'm not writing at the time is my favorite. Like when I'm writing longer, I'm like, I love flash. I really love flash because I like that really quick jolt of a story, the beginning, the end. It's so nice. It's quiet. It's fast. That might be my favorite because it's really tricky.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have like anything extra. It has to be, there's a reason for everything there. Novels are great, but I kind of get lost sometimes in them. So I tend to lean toward the shorter myself because I like to kind of condense things down. So if I'm writing a novel, it's usually like, great, now write it longer, now make it longer, now make it longer. I'm not those people that write, 140,000 words and have to figure out what to cut. I have to like, because I tend to be very concise, and I really like that. Hold on one second. My family's doing chores. I'm going to remind them that I'm being popular and famous right now. Yeah. Can we do chores after my interview? Yeah. Thank you. I love you.
Let me put these away real quick.
Yes, you can put them away. I love you, girls. Hello, sorry. That's what quarantine looks like for us.
Yep. That's fantastic.
They're like, love you, Mom. Bye.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, so I'm kind of the opposite of you. I struggle to write short fiction. I don't know if it's because I grew up in, late 70s and 80s where every book was a 500-page, doorstop, and I still love those. And maybe my writing tries to emulate those too much. I don't know, but I really, anytime I'm trying to write a short story for an open call, I go way over and I have to, just like you said, chop it down. And I envy you to be able to keep it so concise from the beginning.
Like, I envy you being able to just, we should like run together really fast and like,
Yeah.
create the perfect,
Yeah,
right?
like, yeah,
Like
mix it up.
Scooby-Doo.
Right. Yeah, I
Oh,
don't know. I've always loved the backstory and all the subplots, and yeah, I don't know.
see, those should be 2 or 3 other books.
Well,
Or that should be, but also reading has changed so much. Like I grew up with all, the doorstop books too, because you didn't really get a lot of books and you reread the books you had. And if you had like, if you're reading Watership Down, which is nice and thick, that keeps you set for a while. Whereas if you're reading something really little, you've read it 5 times.
right,
Yeah.
Watership Down, you've only
right.
read twice. So it kept it fresher. So I kind of also wonder if the way that media has changed that a lot too. Like I feel like short stories, more people are reading short stories now, I feel, than like when I was a kid, because you wouldn't spend your money on a short story. Why would
Right.
you do that? You
Right.
read it once and you're done. Whereas now you can read it on your phone and you can read it here and you can read it in between things. And it's kind of,
There's a whole
kind of
cottage
nice.
industry just based around 2-sentence horror stories now.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
TV series, and
Mhm.
And yep, and there's Drabbles, the 100-word
Yeah,
stories.
exactly.
Yeah,
I'm a
and
Drabble addict.
are
I
you?
love. Oh,
Really?
yeah. I actually I put 4 in a recent collection.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I won some awards for Drabble.
Oh,
Really?
cool.
I didn't know
Yeah.
there were awards for Drabble.
Yes, there are. I'll see if I'll see if they're still running, and I'll send you the link to enter some. But they took everyone's stories that won and they printed them on cards, like business cards. So you could like give them out or keep
Mhm.
them forever if you wanted. But I have like
Oh,
those cards.
cool.
It's really
That
nice.
is a
Yeah.
great idea.
That is cool.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. It was really fun to do, and just I think that's a brilliant prize.
See, that's why I'll never be successful, because I could never think of like a cool marketing thing like that. Like,
I love people that can.
I
that,
know, I know.
So you know who is a phenomenal author for Drabbles is John Bouja.
Really?
Yeah, he wrote. There's this group that I belong to called the Macabre Ladies. They're a publishing house out of Canada. Eleanor, I'm just plugging this for you. And they put out a whole bunch of collections of Drabbles, and I had 4 of them in a holiday Drabble collection. And there was 4 different stories called the Giving Season. So it was Giving Season 1, 2, 3, and 4. John saw that and was like, "Oh, I can go one better," and he wrote 5 Drabbles from about the same incident, about the same story, but from 5 different perspectives.
Oh, wow.
And I was just absolutely blown away. They were phenomenal. I was in Extreme Drabbles of Dread
I
from the
think
Macabre
he, I
Ladies.
think he read those
Yep, he
when
read
we
them at
were.
the coffee house.
Yeah, okay. It was at the coffee house. Okay, yep. Yeah. So Steve, not to ignore our guest completely.
No, ignore
Um,
me completely. I'm looking all this up on my phone as you're talking.
oh, good. The Macabre Ladies you just mentioned
Yes.
is I think, are they putting out another book of Drabbles?
They actually just released one. Supernatural Drabbles of Dread just came out last week. And actually that brings around another question that I was going to bring up here for you. One of my very good friends, Ruth Ann, is a huge, like she's like a Mercedes fangirl, massive fan of yours. And I put out a call for a question, for questions from people who listen to the podcast and all that. And I invited her to come on, but she lives in rural Texas and her internet is very spotty at best. So she wasn't able to come in. But she wanted to, let's see here. Mercedes is really something. Pretty Little Dead Girls is amazing. I would really love to know what is her view of the women in horror, which is being celebrated this month, and your take on the genre as one of the most impressive women in horror.
Oh, I'm gonna print that out and sleep with that under my pillow tonight. Thank you. That is really sweet. It's interesting about the women in horror. They've canceled it now. That just within this last week. So the Women in Horror Month group that kind of officially started it were like, okay, let's do February Women in Horror Month. They've done it for, I want to say 7 years, but I can't off the top of my head think of it. And then there was kind of some internal issues about whether or not it should be moved to March so that it wasn't competing with like Black History Month, because we want to, you know, absolutely showcase Black history. And I'm in the dark again. Hello.
Spooky.
Right. Ooh. And
Wave your arms until the motion detectors pick it up. Wow.
Yeah, welcome to lighting. It's just nuts over here. But then there was fighting, I guess some infighting, like, yes, let's move it. No, let's not move it. Or they decided to move it, but they didn't let anyone know it was time to move it. And then some people moved it and some people didn't move it. And they're just like, we're done. So women supporting women, but it worked, but it didn't. But they are encouraging that whenever you want to have Women in Horror Month, that we all get together and figure out a Women in Horror Month to do it. So I think it's a wonderful idea, because I love when groups that are kind of overlooked get recognition. At the same time, it's also problematic because I'll say to my husband, oh, it's February, I'm relevant, you know?
Right.
Yep.
And he's like, oh, my sweet darling buttercup, you're relevant all year round. But so there's kind of a lot of people that are for it and a lot of people that are against it, because yes, absolutely celebrate it, but don't forget us the rest of the month.
Yep.
Or the rest of the year, because I write all year round.
That is a great point.
Yeah, I love the celebration of it, and you know, the bringing women in horror to the forefront. I hate that we have to have a special month to do it, because it should just be all the time, right? Yeah, we're on the same page there.
But I think we're getting there.
I think so too.
I think we're getting there. And I really commend the people that started Women in Horror Month, because suddenly there was this unified time where we could talk and celebrate all these amazing women. And again, at the same time, it's so funny when you see all these memes that start going around this time of year where it's like, hey, can you tell me of a man writer in horror? Because I really want to read a man writer in horror. And it makes you see kind of how sad it is, like you said, that we have to have that.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm not going to be angry if someone's choosing to highlight me and fellow women. You know, I think that's amazing. So I'm really glad that it happens. And I will never bite the hand that feeds me. And I think it is wonderful. And sometimes we do things a little bit clumsily, but it is wonderful when people want to stretch and grow and learn different things and do good and do better. So in that sense, I'm all for it. I would love to see the day when it naturally segues away. Maybe not the implosion that I saw, and maybe I'm misreading what really happened, but from the information that I saw, it just kind of, but I would love to see the day when that's not necessary. When it's like, oh, so-and-so is a great writer, a great horror writer, not just so-and-so is a great woman horror writer. And one of the things that bothers me, and I know how important diversity is, and when I worked for Gamut Magazine, we were extremely open about how much, you know, diversity we wanted and inclusiveness and all these things. But I hate when people come to me and be like, I need a woman. Will you write for my anthology? And I'm like, no, my vagina is tired. It's not writing a darn thing for you. You know, it's not picking up a pen. I will write something for you, but it's not. This may be, you know, earlier Steve said if I could take anything out of here that I wanted to, if I said something and regretted it, but I'll keep that in there. Okay. I'll keep that in there.
No, keep it in there.
My mother will never listen to this. But just the fact that people will be like, I need a woman, you're a woman, will you write for this? I find that incredibly offensive and just lame.
You know, I really appreciate you saying that, because for the longest time I have said, and you can ask my wife this at some point,
I will.
Yeah, please do. I just cannot wait until the world doesn't give a shit. I think apathy is going to be the absolute end all for all of our problems, because it's just, I don't care if the writer is Black, white, Hispanic, Chinese, male, female, transgender. Nothing should matter except the work.
In a way, yes.
Yes.
But if you're not actively seeking out these different points of view and experiences, they just get over everything else. Like there's so many. I would like it to be to the point where where the market is flooded with so many different voices that we are finding all these different viewpoints easily, But as of right now, that's not the case.
Yeah.
So right now we still need to actively search to
Right.
find these different voices that are kind of just getting swept under the rug. You have to literally, I've got to find them. And eventually I think there'll be a point where it's safer for people to just write as they are and not feel that they have to tiptoe
Exactly.
around or be found.
That's
But
the
until that
time
point
I'm really
comes,
looking forward
I
to,
hope
because
so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
it's
Just leave it off.
Yeah.
We can see you.
okay. Thank you.
So I wanted to ask you about the Stoker, because, and I'm not trying to make this about me, but it's about you. The first big writing event or convention, whatever I ever went to, was StokerCon in Vegas. The
Oh,
year
really?
you won.
Woo!
And I was a fish out of water. I didn't know a single person. I didn't feel like I belonged there because I didn't even have anything published yet. And it was a very awkward situation. And I went to the awards dinner and I sat, way in the back with strangers because I didn't know anybody. And I'm watching the awards and I'm like, I've never been an awards person, whether it's movies or songs or anything. So I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. They've got a whole like set of awards for books, for horror books. That's cool. And they named it after Bram Stoker. And because enough, I love Jeff Strand. We just had him on the show. But because it was a funny show, I didn't, even then, sitting there watching people get the award, I didn't realize how important that award was until you got yours, because you were like 2 tables away from me and you brought that thing back to your table and you just sat there and you were looking at it. And I was like, the expression on your face was, it like changed my world. I said, this award is really something important. And I was just like amazed by your reaction to winning. So walk us
Well,
through how that felt.
I I don't know if you remember, but I got up there and said I don't have a speech prepared
Yep.
because I had no inkling that I would even be close to winning. And I wore 6-inch high heels, which if I had thought I would win, I would have taken them down an inch or two so I could walk without falling.
You were pretty far away from the podium, so
It was a long, that
it
was a long
was, yeah.
walk. That was a long walk. Here I have it right here because we don't have anywhere else to put it. Here it is still. It's on my desk. My kids play with it all the time. It's has a door that opens and closes. It was really validating because you always hear the Stokers called the Strokers.
Right.
Because, people say there's a lot of nepotism to them and whether there is or is not. For me, there wasn't, because I didn't fit in with that group very well. I was a little, I won't say anti-HWA, but I was pretty vocal about, some of the things that I thought were not running smoothly in it. There's kind of the core group, and then there was me and apparently
Yep.
you.
Yeah, apparently.
And so for me to win that, and I had just gone through like, a huge breakup with my publisher, and it was like a big deal, and it was awful, and to win that, knowing that I hadn't really promoted it, knowing that I hadn't done any of the kind of greasing the wheels that some people say happens, which I've seen other people try to do, but I just don't participate in that. It felt real, and that was validation, and people liked what I did, and they liked the sacrifices that I made for writing, and like it blew me away. To this day, I'm blown away. And it was really meaningful. It still is. And on bad days when I'm like, I can't write at all, I'll never write another word again, I'll think, you know what? I have that Stoker and they can't take that away from me. Like, that was something that was good. I did something good and it was recognized as good on its own merits. And that's probably the most meaningful award I've ever won.
Yeah, to this day, I wish I had pulled out my phone and snapped a picture, because your facial expression looking at that statue said more than what you just said in words. I can't express what an impact it had on me to say, this is really a big deal, and it was.
It was. Thank you
So
for sharing that with me. I've never been so bamboozled in my life.
Oh, it was great for me to sit there and watch you just looking at that statue. I'll never forget it.
I can't remember the rest of the night after that. I don't remember leaving, none of that. Mm-mm.
I believe it.
I don't remember how I got that. I assume I got it back to my hotel room. Suddenly it's at my house. I don't remember.
I believe it. That was a great night.
Oh, thank you. That makes me happy to. Thank you for letting me relive that night through your eyes.
So Steve, you mentioned a little tidbit you dug up on Mercedes.
Oh, great.
Oh, yeah. I was just doing a little poking around, and you have an ice cream flavor named after you?
I do. I also have a skein of yarn named after me.
Okay, now
really,
please tell us about the ice cream, because that's my forte. My wife is a huge knitter, and I would love to get some Mercedes Yardley yarn for her.
That is so awesome. Yeah, Ted, I want to say it's Thewen. I've read his last name. I haven't heard his last name. Does these amazing ice cream flavors that he just creates in his kitchen, and he does videos, and he did that. What was it? White chocolate and lemon?
White chocolate and lemon.
And I keep meaning to try it, and I just never quite remember, because I've never made ice cream before in my life, and it like terrifies me. But he makes it look like it's something that I could make. But is that not the most amazing thing you've ever heard of? Like,
yeah, I mean, forget the Stoker.
Flavor?
I mean,
yeah, you have an ice cream flavor.
I'm so excited. Yeah. So shout out to Ted. Thank you for that. It looks so good. And whenever I'm on Facebook, he's active on Facebook, and I'm like, man, something went today that just wasn't right. He's like, I wish you lived closer and I could just bring you some ice cream. And I'm like, man, I do too. Like, that would be amazing. I mean, and my friend Shannon, she owns a company named Yarn Baby, and she spins her own yarn, and then she dyes it herself, and it's just really amazing. I have some of it, and it's just beautiful and gorgeous. And she did kind of a bloody red color that she named Mercedes. So
nice.
Yeah,
awesome.
She's like, do you mind if I name this after you? And I'm like, I've never been so flattered in my life.
Please send me a link.
I will.
Because I will buy that.
I don't know if it's a limited edition or she has more, but I'll definitely send you what I can find. So
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, her yarn is amazing. It feels so good. She's so talented. We grew up together in like small town Utah, so it's cool to see how we've grown up. I write horror and she spins
yarn. Yeah.
Yeah, who would have thought? You never would have guessed that when you were kids.
That's funny. My wife actually made a cowl for the Penny Social at Nikon like 3 years ago. And she actually was looking for something very interesting. She found a yarn called Used Bookstore. And I forget what the second one was called. It was something like, Writer's Block. And these two colors look absolutely amazing together. And Bracken McLeod tried like hell to win it.
Oh yeah.
It looked. I got a picture of him in it. It looked amazing on him.
He tries to win everything.
Yeah.
He is amazing himself. I love him.
Bracken's one of the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to have to mention him in my will, because at that same one, I won a slipcase cemetery dance edition of Carrie, and I was standing right next to him, and he said some very mean words to me when I won.
I bet they're very eloquent too.
Oh.
And seared to your soul, right?
Beautifully stated. Yes.
Yes.
Actually, it's weird. Today is actually the 4-year anniversary of one of my son's absolute favorite memories. We went into Boston for a reading. Chris Golden, I think it was Chris who was doing a reading at a comic book store, and we met him, Jim Moore, Bracken, and a few other people for dinner before the reading. And my son Xander was 14 at the time, and he was sitting next to Bracken, and he ordered this burger at Boston Burger Works called the WTF burger. It was like 3 patties, pulled pork, bacon, 3 kinds of cheese. It was like this tall when it came, and it disappeared down that. He's now 6'5".
Oh, geez.
and he swallowed that thing practically whole. And Bracken was just staring at him the entire meal. Go, what the hell is up with this kid? He says he made Bracken cry.
I bet he did.
Yeah.
You know, Bracken and Amelia Bennett. I don't know if you know Amelia. She's an editor. She lives in Arizona. She's one of my best friends. They had a hug off because you know how Bracken gives amazing hugs, and so does Amelia. And I was like, who hugs better? And Linda Addison judged. I believe it was Linda Addison. Hugged one, hugged the other. Was very thoughtful. Hugged one, and Amelia just barely inched Bracken out. And
Really?
it was the snuggliest Mekon I had ever seen. Just you know, like those really good, like your body hurts, your soul hurts, they hug you and everything feels better. And it was one of the best things I ever saw in my whole life. And I'm like, yeah, this is horror, everybody.
Yeah.
You know, this is horror. This is what it's like behind the scenes, you know?
Next time I see him, I'm going to have to give him a hug and say, well, that was pretty good, but not as good as Amelia.
Not as good as Amelia's, yeah.
And then he'll
Now
beat
I want
me
to see
up
Jim Moore
again.
take them
Knock you
on.
out stone cold.
Yep. Yeah, what about the Jim Moore hug?
I don't think I've ever hugged Jim Moore.
What?
Oh,
You're the
missing
only one
out.
ever.
I did hug Chris Golden once. In fact, I said, I hear your hugs are wonderful. Can I have one? I don't know if he knew who I was. Now I think he might know who I am. I'm not sure. But
Oh,
he
he
was
knows who
nice
you
enough to do it. You know what I mean? Like, will you hug me? I'm Mekon. I'm so far from home. And just that was amazing. I mean, great hugging is important. And I miss that with all of this going on.
Yeah.
Like my kids, we haven't gone to school at all in person this year. Not once, not at all in person. So it's been like, I don't know. They're all over me because they're so like touch starved. And I'm like, I want to
Right.
hug someone else. Someone like, I don't know my height.
Yeah, Bracken actually only lives about 15 or 20 minutes away from me. And
Totally.
I went over to visit back in the fall before it got too cold. And, you know, we stayed outside with masks and it was great. I'm like, this is the first time I've ever visited Bracken and not gotten a hug. Like, it's great, but at the same time, it sucks. Like,
Yeah.
we were close, but not close enough.
Right. And
It's
you have
really
that
hard.
instinct. Like you're like, I need this connection. I need this love, especially people that you're used to doing that with.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
Bracken's one of the best. We
Yeah.
have to get him on, Steve.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's on the short
I'm like,
list.
yeah, you do. Yeah, we do. We have to get them on, the three of us.
I think we may be interviewing a third host here.
I think we are.
Either that or she's going to force me out and it'll just be the two of you.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
No, it'll be me and your wife, Steve, who I totally
Uh-oh,
love,
here
who
we
I never
go.
met, and
She could do it.
that would be amazing.
Yeah, the only problem is she hates reading horror.
Oh, so does my
Yeah.
mother, and she's a librarian, so
Yeah.
we're okay.
Well,
If my-
has
if
your
my
mother ever
librarian-
put something that you've written down, just looked at you in the face and said, "What is wrong with you?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Do we want to dive into that, Steve? No, just
No,
kidding.
no,
Just
let's
No.
not.
No, I have a very supportive parents, but my mom, she won't read it. She won't read it at all. She started reading Little Dead Red, and I'm like, oh, out of all of them, that's probably not the one for you to read, Mom. And she's like, well, I got to the part where they made soup for grandma, just like when we were kids and used to make soup. And I'm like, yeah, stop there. That's like
Stop there, yeah.
that's like page 3 of the book, you know? That's good. That's great. You keep that memory and you hold that.
She's gonna take away your fairy tale books and put them on the high shelf if you're not
Yeah, that's
careful.
mean. My dad was 6'5". It was no hardship for him to put him up there, but I had to get that chair. I mean, that's the kind of kid I was. Are you sneaking your fairy tale book down again? Sorry, Mom and Dad. I mean, they're so lucky.
Those are the stories I love to hear, though. That's great.
Sorry, Mom. We're gonna keep it up there an extra day. No.
So what are you working on now?
Oh my goodness, so many things.
Everything, I know.
Everything, yes. I'm working on something that will be officially announced next month, but it's a sweeping, multi-author conspiracy thriller. And I'm
Ooh.
really excited. It's unlike anything that I've ever done before. So I'm really excited about that. I just sold a novel that
Ooh,
I'm
congratulations.
thank you, deeply in love with, that features my kids in it. Basically, there's a son with special needs and a daughter that goes missing. That's going to be out in summer of next year. And I'm working on the Dorian Gray story, and then I'm working on a couple other short stories and a science fiction story. So a lot of things going on right now. So
Right. Excellent.
I'm excited about them all. I'm working on a book that I've been wanting to work on for like 5 years, but always put it off because I felt I had to do other things first. That's almost completed. So
Excellent.
I'm so happy. Yeah, I like it. I like being busy. I should probably focus on one thing, but that's not how my brain works. Like my husband can methodically finish a task, start another task. And I'm like, how do you do that? And he's like, how do you do this? Like,
Whatever this is.
whatever that is over there, how are you doing it?
It's the old plate spinning act.
Yep.
Yeah, which, means you drop them all eventually. Have you seen plate spinning acts?
They never end well.
They end in tears, my
Mhm.
friend, but sure fun while it lasts, I guess.
So it sounds like throughout the pandemic and having the kids home and lockdown and all the other stuff going on in the world, it sounds like creatively you've been okay.
There were about 6 months where I was in a dead
Oh,
lock, like
okay.
just so stressed, really depressed. And we live in a very small house. It's like it's very small. It's like 1,000 square feet, and there's 5 of us in here. And so we can't all be in a separate room. There aren't
Mhm.
enough bedrooms. So, we have a kid set up here, a kid set up here, a kid set up here, my husband set up here, and I'm the one that lost my space. So there it's taken a while for me to get back into the groove, and it was hard to be like I'm the one that loses the space, you know what I mean? My husband's job keeps us fed and the roof, and the kids schooling, the kids always come first, I mean they have to.
Mhm.
And so finding out that I came in last every time kind of was hard for my psyche, but also necessary. And now we've kind of got where they're can manage themselves a little bit better and figure out their online programs. And I do have to sit with my son during his schooling because I'm killing it in special ed with him. I am just so smart. But besides sitting with him for his classes, they can do their homework by themselves. So I'm finding the time where I can write again. That, and I don't sleep. I'm up until 4 o'clock almost every morning because it's the only time it's quiet.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. So now that I am writing again, I'm kind of writing all the things.
Good.
That's
Yeah,
great.
it feels good. It feels really good. Thank you.
Speaking of all the things, I noticed that you've got a graphic novel being worked on right now. It's
Yes.
a reinterpretation of Pretty Little Dead Girls.
Yes. I am so excited. So Orion Zangara, and I love his name, is the artist behind that. And we're doing it in 3 installments. We did the Kickstarter for the first 100 pages, and then as each 25 pages get done digitally, we'll send them out and then send out a print of all 100. Then we'll do a second Kickstarter for the second 100 pages and a third for the third. And then at the end, gather them all together and have like this huge, because I didn't realize this, but with graphic novels, you need to have it done first and then you pitch it.
Mhm.
Whereas with novels, you have it done and pitch it, but like we have to have it done and made and then show the physical copy to like someone and be like, do you want to sell this for us?
I
Which is
did not know that.
neither did I. And I'm really grateful. Orion is amazing. He does like the Stone Man series. He does all these graphic novel series and comic series. So he's like, well, this is how it works. And I'm like, I had no idea. So he has the connections and I have the agent. So we'll get it all done and then hopefully set my agent loose with his connections. And we're hoping for like utopia. But it's beautiful. It is so beautiful. His
I
art.
saw the page this
Oh,
afternoon with the kiss, like the
right.
kiss, and
Isn't that stunning?
I was blown away. I mean, it's gorgeous work.
Every time he shows me a page, I get all like emotional and teary and grateful, and like for him to see something that I wrote, and that's my favorite book I ever wrote. I wrote that entire book in 3 weeks. I've never
Really?
written
Wow.
a book that fast. It was just fun. It was just, I've never had that joyful of an experience. And so for him to like read it and interpret it and be like, this is what I'm seeing. This is how I see the characters. And it's like, that's amazing. Like, oh, I kind of feel the same way about this that I can about the Stoker. You know, we had some hiccups. We're running a little late getting stuff. COVID kind of threw a wrench in the works, you know. And he'll be like, at the end, we'll have this gorgeous project. He's like, no one can ever take that from us. When we're done, we will have 300 pages of this in our hands. No one can ever take that away. So it's like, it's going to be a thing of beauty. It's going to be, it's kind of a life-changing dream project for me.
So
I
that's
will definitely be
interesting.
ordering one of those when it comes out.
Thank you. It's going to be
Yeah,
beautiful.
that absolutely. Do, so he's doing an interpretation on the art side,
Mhm.
obviously, right?
Right.
Do you have to do any rewriting, or does he
Oh
just
yeah.
take-
Yeah.
'cause I've never gone through the process. That's fascinating.
I hadn't either. It was like learning a different language. I had to learn how to take a novel and condense it down into like 2 or 3 lines.
Mhm.
And I don't think that way. I don't think in pictures. So I'm like, here's this page. How do I put it in 2 lines? How do I break those lines up in, 1 to 5 panels? And it was really difficult for me. I had like an absolute mental block for a really long time. And once I figured it out, um, and we were able to do it. And Orion's talented enough and he knows the characters well enough that I'm like, Brian, he looks wry and he nails it, or, Eddie looks smug and he's got it. Like he is amazing and I have very little I have to do there. But it was really, seriously, it was like learning a completely foreign language in order to communicate with my artist. It was,
Yeah.
the knowledge I'll always have, but wow, was it a learning curve. I mean, I would sit there for hours and be like, how do I break this down? What's important? How do I distill it? Because I think, we discussed how I like to keep things kind of lean and concise. Well, there's lean and concise, and then there's like 2 sentences.
Yeah, then there's
And
comic
then,
book scripting. Yep.
for a novelist, that was terrifying. Like,
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare. I mean, I think every writer hates trying to write like the synopsis and the back cover copy and the pitch, and you're doing that for a whole book. I don't know. That doesn't sound like fun to me.
it became fun once I figured out what I was doing and didn't feel like I was an idiot. It was that feeling of I can't figure this out and
Right.
and once I got that, then it's like, okay, well, screw you. I'm going to write this thing. And then it was a challenge and then it was done. And then it turned out really, really well. Like
That's great.
and to have Orion's feedback, he'd be like, this works, that doesn't work. This, like I could not only because I can't draw, right? But I could not do this without him. He was actually the one that approached me and said, would you consider doing this project? I really love your book. And I'm like, what? So, I mean, if you don't have an Orion, you can't do it.
Right.
But if you have an Orion, he made it amazing.
I think
It's
everybody should have a Ryan.
yeah,
Yeah.
an Orion. Yeah, we all need one. We all need one. And he's giggly. Like he's very giggly and very happy. So if you're like, this isn't working, this isn't, and he's like, well, figure it out. It's okay. We've got this, yeah. Do you want to see my cat's doing funny things? Yeah, everything's okay. Like everyone needs an Orion.
Yeah, even if you're not a writer, I think everyone needs one.
Yeah. I mean, that's our new t-shirt slogan. Let's sell them and make bank.
So is there a timeline for that? I know you mentioned a Kickstarter, so I don't know if you have
Yes,
any.
the first Kickstarter's done. So we're expecting it to be done the first volume by the end of this year. We're thinking of starting the second Kickstarter maybe in October. And then that gives us a year to do all the rewards. I'm going to have them done up front. Like last time I made quilts, I painted paintings. Orion did all these, wonderful pictures. My side, I'm going to have them all done up front because it's too hard to be like, I'll paint a picture for you. What do you want? Because they're like, and someone literally said, I want a Chihuahua playing with a snake. And I'm like, well, let me research that because that's not in my wheelhouse right now.
Sounds like one
So
of those
next
bad
time-
tattoo shows.
Oh my goodness. I love the tattoo shows, but yes, yes, I'm going to do things quicker so that they can just hopefully have everything sent to them from my end within 30 days. And then it takes a year, to get all the art and then we'll do it again. So it's another like 5 years for the whole
Wow,
thing. It's a
that's
commitment.
unbelievable.
It is a commitment. And I love that Orion is so kind to do it because, he's not getting paid much. He's getting paid a little. I'm not getting paid anything, but his wife was like, if you're going to be doing this for 5 years, you need a little a little tiny bit a panel, so it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. I mean, I wish I could show you all the art that I have. Make your jaw drop.
I wish you could too.
It's beautiful. I'll sneak you guys a couple previews of some things. I mean, it's beautiful.
And if anybody out there listening is interested, you can go up to your blog and see some of those images as well, right?
Yes.
Yep. And I have to compliment you on your blog. How's that for a transition? That
That
is
was
one of
great.
the most eclectic collections of information I think I've ever seen. You've got, I was saying to Tom earlier, you've got everything from like literary criticism to recipes, do it yourself, mental health. There is an incredible amount of stuff up there, and it's all very personal.
Yeah, I can't lie. Maybe I should,
Mm.
but it helps me to write things down. It helps me. That's how I process. And I like finding out that I'm not the only one that feels these things. And
Mhm.
so it's easier to say it and share it. Are you talking about like the TMS therapy, for
I
example?
was going to mention that. I
Yeah,
didn't know if that's something you wanted to talk about or not,
it's
but
absolutely, it's fine. I wouldn't
good.
put it up there if I,
I thought it was absolutely courageous that you put that kind of information out there about yourself just to make other people realize that they're not alone in that. It really moves me when I
thank
was
you.
reading it.
It feels foolhardy in a way. It's very vulnerable. And I know there's such a stigma with like depression and things
Mhm.
like that, but I can't do it anymore at the level that I'm at, I can't. Part of this wonderful shaved head hairstyle, which I love and is empowering and simple and wonderful, was also a lot of I'm overwhelmed and I need to simplify, you
Mhm.
know, and I need to make things easier for myself. And this TMS therapy today was my third day doing that. And it's a transcranial magnetic stimulation for those that are not familiar with it. And they put a big magnet like by your head. It's not touching your head, but it feels like someone's knocking on your face. And it's crazy, but it's supposed to kind of fire those neurons that are like when you're depressed, just kind of lay low and don't fire.
Mhm.
And it's uncomfortable and it's weird and it's vulnerable and it makes you really tired. Like I slept really hard after the first two sessions. Today I did better, but it's like going out and doing something that seems kind of crazy. But a lot more people, I mentioned it on my Facebook, and a lot of people are actually doing it themselves. I know at least 5 people that were like, oh, I've done that, or my friend's done that. So I didn't know anybody that had done that. So we're not as alone as we think,
Mhm.
but it seems like you're the only one going through this. And I was afraid because my family, the women on my paternal side have, my great grandmother like passed away in an asylum. My grandmother had shock treatments, so there's this history of mental illness. And my fear was always being one of them. And now I'm one of them, but I have something I can do that's non-invasive. I'm open with my kids about it. They know that sometimes mom's a little more tired. They know what they need to know at an age appropriate level. And I also need to understand that my kids, my 12-year-old, well, she's 13 now, has shown signs of depression since she was 12. I need to be aware as a parent. I
Mhm.
can't just like, let's not talk about it, because I don't want her to have those same feelings growing up that I had, thinking that, well, no one else feels this way because no one ever talks about it, And I grew up as a person of faith where you don't talk about depression. You pray it away, you smile it away, you must exercise it away. If you're depressed, you're doing something wrong. You're sinning somehow. God will take this depression away from you. It's an affliction sort of thing. I don't ever want my kids to feel like that, because that's not the case. And that's how I grew up. And so I was deeply shamed of, these feelings that I had, because they were wrong, but they're not wrong. And they're really common. And now they're more common than ever. We're all going a little crazy with the pandemic. So
Mhm. Yep.
It's true.
Thank you for putting all of that out
Yeah.
there.
well, thank you. Thank you for saying that, because I still feel like, oh man, it's vulnerable feeling, but I think it's important that we feel vulnerable sometimes.
Yep. Now, you mentioned your religious upbringing. Now, from what I gleaned from what I've let's try this again in English. What I've been gleaning from just, skipping through your blog a little bit, you still are a church-going person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Still a
find
person
that
of faith.
interesting
Yeah.
because I grew up Catholic. I went to a Catholic school. I had regular beatings from nuns who were actually
Oh,
dressed like the penguins. But, still, we raised our sons in not the Catholic Church because ew. But, we
because
did
you.
that we found a congregational church and we were very involved with that. My wife was, head of the Christian Education Board. My sons were, both involved, musically. And as they got older, we were all three deacons and, very involved in the church. And that's after, I quite literally uh, almost burst into tears because I did not want to get married in the church that my family grew up in because the priest there was such a dick. Um, how do you, balance that with, obviously a little bit of suffering as a child in the church?
You know, I have to remind myself that churches are made up of people,
Hmm.
like real people, and we make mistakes. The doctrine of the church that I belong to, I believe in the doctrine. I believe in the goodness. I believe in, hope and loving your fellow man and worshiping your God. Um, however you see that God. Uh, But the people screw up a lot, and I screw up a lot, and that's okay. So for me, I believe in the doctrine of the church, not necessarily the people culture of the church.
Right.
But it's interesting because I just did a roundtable podcast on Dead Headspace. Dead Headspace did a podcast roundtable with, like, let's see, Ronald Kelly and I, and Todd Kiesling was there as our not person of faith
Hmm.
person that, and we all talked about that, being horror writers and being people of faith and how that was. And we all kind of had these strict upbringings, and it was funny. Some stayed with the churches and some went to different churches. I stayed with my church because I had a time where when I was 19 or so, the guy I was dating asked me to marry him, which where I'm from, 19 is average at marrying age. It's not as young as it is now. Like,
Hmm.
but he wasn't a member of the church, and I had to think about, like, what do I believe, what do I want? And eventually I was like, I do believe in the things, and our lives were not compatible with me believing these things and the lifestyle that he had. And so I got to make that decision for myself. I wasn't like forced to make that decision. I went to church with my parents, but I made the decision when I was older, like what I believed or whatnot. So
Hmm.
it was easy for me to carry those beliefs with me because I wasn't forced into it. I had to sit there and have some soul searching, like, what do I personally believe? What do I want? What do I want for my life? And so, and our church now is starting to be more open about mental illness and depression. Like, they started discussing it as like leaders. I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints is what I belong to. And they talk about it, like, in conference, where it used to be not mentioned at all. Now it's like very, okay, here's what you do. And here's, and very compassionate. So it's being addressed in a way that it was never addressed before. And that's really, really helpful.
Hmm.
So that's really, really helpful. In fact, I did a talk in church on depression like 2 weeks ago. And I show up with a shaved head, and I'm like, let's discuss depression. And they're like, you know, but at the same
That's
time,
amazing.
they're like, oh, it's Mercedes. It's cool.
Yeah.
They know me. It's, she's all right.
That's great.
You're digging up scary, awesome stuff. You are like snooping around the dark corners.
That's what I do.
I love it. You should be a private investigator, unless you are.
So I wanted to mention something you touched on very briefly. You glossed over it, and I'm not going to let you gloss over it. When you were talking about your graphic novel, you said, "Oh, I can't draw," but then you started talking about painting.
Oh,
So you are also an artist in painting.
I newly stretched my wings with painting, watercolor.
Okay.
Thank you. And I actually did a lot of the interior art for Arterial Bloom that I edited, but that was because we didn't have any interior art. So it was
Oh, I didn't realize you did that.
the ones that are Todd Kiesling, who did the cover and is gorgeous, did a lot of the cover that he used for that. And then there were some that were not from the cover. Those were just pieces specifically for the stories that I nervously painted, but it was cool to do. I like it. Painting was always a mental block for me. Like I was always like, oh, I can never paint. I thought I could never paint and I could never write horror were the two things that I thought I could never do. And after I
You may have been mistaken.
I like to apparently prove people, including myself, wrong, I guess. But that's the best way to get me to do something, be like, oh, you can't do that. Like, watch me, you know. I'll wear myself out trying to prove that wrong. But thank you. I do like to paint. My favorite thing I think I painted was a butterfly, and he's really angry and he has a tiny little gun. And that's probably my favorite. He's like a nice looking monarch, but if you look at it closer, he's got the angry eyebrows and a weapon. I call him the bitter fly. So
I'm always amazed at so many fellow writers that have other artistic abilities. Like a lot of them, you've been to Nikon, a lot of them are fantastic musicians,
and
singers, and I'm like, I can barely write, and it's the
You got
only
Gary
thing
Frank out on the quad with the guitar.
yeah.
I don't believe that for a minute. Yeah, I play the piano and the flute,
Ah.
the ukulele, and sing.
I have been trying desperately to teach myself guitar because I think it's just so cool. It feels like it should be so relaxing to just sit around and like strum a guitar.
It's
And
not.
I can't get my hands to do it.
Start
And it's
with
so
ukulele.
frustrating.
Start with your uke. You just happen to have one right here on the wall. You've got your 4 strings. You just start with your uke and then graduate to
Really?
guitar. Yeah.
I thought we were going to
Interesting.
get a little concert.
I did too. I was excited. A little tiptoe through the tulips or something.
No, but that ukulele has that one's not tuned, but it does have a voodoo doll tied to the end of it. So
Oh,
I'll show you.
this is my favorite part of the show, is seeing
Yep.
all the cool stuff that people have. That's great.
I made that. This is Oh Hey, the voodoo doll, and he's just tied to this ukulele. That's my first uke. I have 3 now. You just kind of start collecting. And I also have a star crown. So I mean, we have all sorts of fun stuff.
Ooh, look at that.
Right? So show and tell, right?
So how did you feel? Well, I don't want to say how did you feel. Obviously, the decision to go all virtual for the Stokers this year was absolutely the right decision.
Yeah.
100% support it, as much as it breaks my heart, because I was so looking forward to Denver. And I was going to take a side trip back up to the Stanley in Estes Park, which is one of my favorite places in the world.
Of course you are.
So all virtual. What do you think? How's it going to go?
This will be probably the 3rd con that's gone all virtual that I've attended, and they've all been wonderful.
Good.
They've all been
Yeah,
wonderful.
it seems like, I mean, we've had a year to figure it out now. I
Yeah.
can't believe it's been a year. I've been working full time from home since the middle of March. So
Yeah, we went into quarantine on my birthday, which was
Yeah.
February 13th last year.
Okay, yeah.
And it's coming up, and it's like,
Yeah, because I mean, the Stokers last year, did they even have any virtual events, or was it just the award ceremony? I
They
think.
did the
can't-
awards because we streamed the awards here.
Right.
yeah, I can't think of any other virtual events.
No, I don't. So yeah, I think they've figured it out pretty quickly. I've done a bunch of events. I haven't done any virtual cons yet. I might poke in. Is it BossCon that's this weekend?
Yes.
Yeah.
And LTUE, Life, the Universe, and Everything in Utah. That is, if you can go to a
Really?
con. Yes, it
Is
is
that
one
a
of the,
Douglas Adams con?
it's a sci-fi con.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But it is one of the best cons ever. It's really programmed like to the teeth. Like you wear yourself out. If you go attend in person, you see people on couches everywhere because they're so tired, and nobody drinks, so it's all like go 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 go. But just the information, the amount of information you'll get is amazing. And Michael Brent Collins is one of the guests,
Okay.
over there, and he is always amazing and such a good teacher. So every year on Valentine's Day, for some reason, that's when it is, but that's worth going to virtually.
Yeah,
And
I had never heard of that one. That's one I will
they
take
put
note of.
on, yeah, it's unlike any horror con. Like you go to a horror con and they're pretty awesome, but you can kind of skip a lot of it because there's you're like, "Meh," and people are all like, I don't know what I'm doing on this panel. You know, they just
Right.
pulled me up here. This is not like that. This is like people are there with their notebooks. So it's a learning
Excellent.
con. Yeah. I suggest that. Yeah, the life, the universe, and everything, the LTU econ. And
Oh,
I think you
cool.
can still get into it now, but every year.
Good to know. See all the
Yeah.
things I learn here. This is great.
It's good. It's a really good. And I love like today I went to a book discussion group with Margaret Atwood. We were
I
discussing
saw that.
Yeah.
yeah, like I couldn't do that before, And a couple weeks ago I went to a speech by Anne Lamott virtually, and we wouldn't have done that before. So I
Right.
love the access that I feel that we're getting because of all of this, even though I wish all this wasn't happening. It's just,
Mhm.
especially with like a medically fragile kid, I'm freaked out all the time. We've been pretty locked down, none of the
Yeah, I can't imagine how hard and scary at times that must be for you.
Yeah, well, we have in Vegas a couple weeks ago, we had a 23% infection rate.
Oh,
You know,
Jeez.
and it's like, well, my kids will die, so let's not get that. Okay, kids, sorry, you don't get to see family or friends ever. We live here now, always in the house. So
oh,
We've
I'm
always
jealous
lived
of
in
your
Wisconsin.
weather. If not your infection rate, I'm jealous of your weather because we've got quite a bit of snow here in
yeah, I
Massachusetts.
miss the snow.
No, you don't. No.
I never had to shovel it, so I can miss it.
I have to say, having been eh, my day job is about an hour commute each way, and not having to do that makes the winter a lot more enjoyable
Mhm.
Doesn't
because
it?
that adds a lot of stress to my life, having to drive an hour each way when the roads are
Right? Not
bad. And
fearing for your death every day.
yeah, so it's been fun. All we do is go out and walk the dogs, and it looks pretty, and I don't have to drive in it. So
Hey,
Yep.
there have been some good things, like
there have been.
not commuting. My husband usually works until like 9 o'clock at night, and him home and doing that is so different than him out of the house and doing
Right.
that. Like he can still, in between calls, he's helping my daughter with her math, or the other one's sitting on his lap or whatever. So that's been nice. But I'm ready for this to be done. I am tired of the terror, the anxiety, the depression,
The lack of
explaining to my kids
Bracken
I can't
McLeod
do stuff.
hugs.
What?
The lack of Bracken McLeod hugs.
I haven't hugged a bracken in a long time. I have been severely without bracken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's no good.
Yeah,
I
I would
think
say,
I think we're almost out of it. I really do. I think
Yeah.
the fall maybe we'll get to do some in-person events. I'm
I don't
hoping.
know.
I'm
I
really
don't
hoping
know.
Nikon happens.
I don't think so.
No, you be quiet.
I don't. Even if it happens, I don't know. I don't know if it's the right thing. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I've
I've been
already
looking
been
forward to Joe
vaccinated.
Lansdale for 2 years.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, my day job is for a healthcare organization, so we
Oh,
got
that's
luck.
wonderful.
One perk,
Right? You get to see everything go mad, but hey, you get the
right?
vaccine.
Yeah,
What was the
luckily
second one?
I'm not on the front lines. I'm in the IT group, so I don't have to deal with any of that stuff. But yeah, it was interesting. They really have the whole vaccine process down. As long as there's enough of it to go around, we should all be getting it pretty soon.
That's great.
Yeah,
Vegas is number 7 from the bottom and rolling it out. Like it's all, what's going on? We don't know. But I mean,
right.
you saw our mayor, right? On the news
Yeah.
for like, we'll be a control group and see what it's like to not social
Mm,
distance and see what happens.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
I'm
oh,
sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I just don't understand why people don't understand people shouldn't have to die. I
Nope.
mean, I don't know how to, if you don't get that, I don't know how to explain it to you. You should
No.
care about people.
It's hard to believe that I've actually lost friends not to the disease, but to their non-belief in the disease, where I've just removed myself from their life. And I remember arguing with, and this isn't just a Facebook friend, this is a guy I graduated high school with, and we've seen each other socially, not just at reunions. This is like a real, in the real world friend.
Right.
And he just started, I don't know, like he wanted everything to open up back in like April. And that at that time, I think the US deaths were, maybe at, I don't know, 40, 50,000. I honestly can't remember back then. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, how many deaths is enough for you to close things? And he just kept going back to like, well, people need to work, people need to make money. And I'm like, people need to stay alive. Like, how do you not put that as a higher priority than the economy? And finally, I just said, you know what? I've known you 30 years, but it's time to say goodbye. And that was it. So, and even now, a year later, where we're at almost 500,000 in our country, and there's still people like that out there. They won't wear the masks. They won't get the vaccine when they have the opportunity. And it's just, it just baffles my mind. I can't fathom it.
Yeah.
I know.
It's hard.
That's what I was going to say earlier when you were talking about one of your projects that had to do with like conspiracy theories. I'm like, oh, that'll never sell. Nobody believes in those things anymore.
Those aren't real.
Right. Meanwhile, people are telling me I have a chip in me now because I've been vaccinated. So, yeah.
You're like, whatever. Is it a staying alive chip? I'll take it.
No, it's nanobots. The chip you'd know because you could
What's
feel
that? Bloodshot, or what is that Vin Diesel movie?
Yeah, Bloodshot. That was based on a Valiant comic book.
That was the last movie I saw in theaters before it shut down.
I am really sorry, man.
Yeah. I
That's
actually,
no
I
way
think
to go out.
I think it was the Pet Sematary remake for me, so not much better.
Really? I haven't seen the remake.
There was one great twist to the remake, and they showed it in the trailer, and they ruined it. That was the only good thing about it.
That was Bloodshot. Like, the whole idea is that he's doing the same. I'm going to spoil Bloodshot for you guys.
No,
I don't think that's possible.
Yeah, I'll never see it. So
the whole thing is he's, reliving the same thing over and over and over, and is being like programmed to see different people, and his mind is being messed with. And they put that in the trailer, and then the whole movie's like leading up to this. And I was like,
yeah, even in Pet Sematary, even the way it was filmed was absolutely perfect until the last second. You didn't know it was the girl, because they showed the whole, the boy running and chasing the kite and the truck coming, and you're like, oh, this is, everybody knows.
Gabe, oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was ruined because you already saw it in the trailer. And I'm like, I don't understand why they would do that. And then the rest of the movie kind of sucked. So
yeah.
Yeah.
That was so terrifying, though. I remember reading
I know.
Seventh grade. I read that and was like, I'm so afraid.
Yeah, we'll be back to the theaters soon, I hope.
I don't know, man. Maybe.
Yeah. I've never been a big theater goer anyway, so I don't really care. I'm happy with my Netflix.
I love to see things in theaters, but it's just, now my kids are old enough they can watch each other, and I can go. I used to go, like, when they were in school, I'd slip off to a matinee every now and then, and it was just like,
yeah.
I went and saw Hereditary, and I was all, whoa.
Yeah.
That was a thing.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was. I miss stuff like that. I miss sneaking away in the middle of the day. Now I sneak away and I sit in my car next to a park, but I don't dare go walk in the park because I'll sit in the car and look at the park, and I'm like, this is me escaping,
Yeah.
Right.
I have to be home in 15 minutes anyway, but it's just, I miss that. I miss being alone. I don't know. I just miss the way things were. And it makes you think about, like, World War II and whatnot. and all the things that people miss. I mean, I believe in the apocalypse, right? So I'm not like, this isn't going to get much better. You know,
Yeah.
how do you keep a positive attitude with that? Like, you know,
Hang in there. We're going to get through it.
Yeah.
absolutely. We always do.
Oh, one thing that I don't know if Tom set your expectations on this, but one thing that we like to do, um, this podcast actually came out of a group of events that we would have where we had um, underappreciated, little known writers gather in a coffee house type situation and do readings and post links to their materials and things. So one thing we like to do with every guest is to get both, a list of their upcoming releases and things. We talked about that a little bit, but we also want to get a name of a writer or an artist that you think is underappreciated and you would like to give a little boost to.
Okay, I love Linda Marshall. She's a new writer. She wrote this story called Kudzu Stories in Arterial Bloom, which is the anthology that I edited. And she just has this beautiful down home way of speaking that's really lovely, really astute, and also just kind of melancholy and chilling. And for an artist, I love Lillian Rose Asterios. I'm going to say her name wrong, but she just does the most gorgeous watercolors. And the HWA did an art gallery this month in February, and it has a couple of my paintings in there. But the first ones are Lillian's, and she just amazing. She does art, she does commissions, she does book covers, she makes soaps, she does beautiful jewelry. I have some earrings that are made out of like ethically sourced butterfly wings that she lives out, in the wilderness, and like she'll find, lunar moths on the ground that have died, and butterflies, and she'll use their wings to make art, and just gorgeous. So those two,
Wow.
Linda
Yeah, that sounds
Linda
really
Marshall
cool.
and Lillian Asterios. Just amaze balls.
Very cool.
Very cool.
All right. Well, that is just about an hour here for this. So, um, unless you have anything else that you want to bring up, I think we'll
No,
go ahead with
I
that.
think I've ran my mouth off for an hour. I'm good.
Well, that's what you're
And
here
before
for.
Exactly.
Before that, because Steve and I chatted for about 15 minutes before we even started.
Yeah. Highlight of my day.
It was awesome. I enjoyed it a lot.
Very cool. Well,
Thank you
thank you
guys
so much for coming out and joining us this week. And this is, going to be part of our Women in Horror Month release, so that will be coming out hopefully very soon. We already interviewed Morgan Sylvia. Are you familiar with her?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, she was amazing. Have you read the what was the name of the
Her story
Silver
is Silver Heart.
Silver
that
Heart
It was in the
the
Wicked
Wicked
Women anthology.
No, I haven't.
You got to read
Phenomenal.
that.
You have to read it.
Yeah.
I will. I'll look that up.
And I don't know if you saw this, Tom, but I had to go out and buy another copy of Abode because we were talking about it, and I couldn't find it because of the move. I was like, oh crap, I want to read that again now. So I went out and bought another copy.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, every author wants to hear that, right? I
Yeah.
bought another copy, like, oh, they really like me.
This is so fun.
This is a blast.
Yeah, thank you guys. I needed to talk shop with adults.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
This has been the highlight of my month. This has been great.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thanks
All
for
right.
coming on.
Thanks for coming on.
It was a pleasure. I appreciate it.
All right.
Have a great day.
You too. Always nice talking to you. Thanks.